Welcome in, everybody. Come on in. We have a great episode planned today. While you're popping in, as always, we want to know where you're visiting from. Drop that in the chat for us. Everyone always loves a good shout out. Tell us where you're from. Bismarck State, Casper, of course. Laurie. Troy is in the house. How we doing, Corey? There we go. Now we're blowing up. A friend Mallory is in the house. It's been a while since I've gotten an email from you, Mallory. Come on in. Hello, everybody. Drop in the chat where you're coming from. We'll get started in just a minute while everyone gets settled and there's Zooms all recording. Come on in, couple on in. Couple more seconds. I'll give everybody. Welcome, welcome. All right. We can go ahead and get going, I think. Welcome in, everybody, to Cadence Campus Live. We have a great episode today, serving the whole student. You'll enjoy that pun as we get started and moving into the episode, into the questions. So if you are new, welcome to Cadence Campus Live. If you are new, like I said, every couple months, our Cadence boot camps used to focus on a lot of hot topics across campus. And then we also had a Cadence Campus newsletter that we're going to be bringing out content highlights and product sneak peeks and other things like that. So what we decided to do is combine them both together and for whatever reason, put me on the screen to host this and we can bring you all of those hot topics to you right to your doorstep live. So here we are, and we are excited to get going. Joining me today on this episode is, one second, Laurie Johnstone. She is the Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at Casper College. Laurie, I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit other than what I just said. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about where you're from and where Casper is.
Sure. So like Gary said, I am in Casper, Wyoming, which is kind of dead center of the state of Wyoming. Today it's actually a pretty nice day. We're kind of known for our nasty winters and gorgeous summers. So I've been with the college. This is year 15 for me. Most of that has been in financial aid and just recently inherited the admissions department.
Wonderful. So we are going to hit on a couple of those topics, but another cool couple of things that are close to your heart as well. So that is actually going to be what brings me to my first question. But first, if you and the audience have any questions, you are, of course, welcome to drop those into the Q&A or into the chat. The one and only Jen Dythorn is here to manage that as well. And she'll be able to pass those along or answer them right directly to you as well. So that is my Q&A spiel. So we can go ahead and do this, and it's going to get a little cozier in here. So Laurie, my first question to you is about FAFSA, and I'm sorry to do this for you, but is FAFSA done FAFSA-ing? And you can go ahead and talk about that.
So we've equated it to building the plane while we're flying it. I'm not even sure we had any blueprints when it came to this year's FAFSA, but here we are doing the best that we can with it. Is it done FAFSA-ing? No, I don't think it is. We've still got some hiccups that we're all working through, and anybody in the financial aid realm is probably going, oh, buddy, yeah, we are. So, we're just taking it kind of one day at a time. We're working the best we can with our students and their families to be able to get through the process. What we are seeing in the end is it actually is better for students. It will be better. We're hopeful that things will be up and running for the next award cycle. So, yep, we're just building the plane as we fly.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. Is that what you're trying to get across?
Yeah, and we're just hoping it's not a train. So
that's great. So it's not done yet, but as someone in your position, can you tell us a little bit about your plan or what you have been doing
Sure.
from when the FAFSA started doing all the things that it's been doing, and what's the plan moving forward?
Sure. So we actually pulled some numbers this morning, just out of pure, morbid curiosity. We're down in FAFSA, but I feel like that is pretty common across the nation. We have run a couple of campaigns on, hey, we think it's working now. Go ahead and give it a shot. Of course, worded much nicer than that. We've tried to reach students to tell them that they're able to get in, they're able to make corrections now. Moving forward, we're going to continue to kind of do the same thing. We're going to target current students and applicants and encourage them to do the FAFSA. My school doesn't require the FAFSA, nor do we have a deadline to file the FAFSA except for June 30th of 2025. So, we expect to be down. It's kind of not a surprise for us. We're going to keep plugging along and encouraging them to fill it out.
That's great. We're glad that you kind of have that flexibility for you guys too. So
Yeah.
that's great. All right. No more FAFSA talk. Let's move on. We can talk
Thank you.
about that's a whole nother episode, I'm sure. So um, from now we can get into a little bit more like cadence specific things. From an admissions standpoint, what is your favorite way to use cadence?
Sure. So, I think one of the challenges we face as institutions is getting to students where they're at. The emails, the phone calls, that doesn't work. But you know what they have all the time? Their phone. So we utilize Cadence a lot to be able to even just nudge them to say, hey, we sent you a really important email and you should go log in and check that out. We're also sending out text messages around advising days and orientation, events, walk-in advising, all of the things we have going on all summer long to try and prevent some of that summer melt that we see.
Great. So the all important nudge of letting them know that things are coming to do some things.
Exactly. There's stuff in your email. You should really log in and check it. Oh, and by the way, summer classes start Monday.
That's great. That's a good way to kind of like get away from having to send a link in the text and still getting them to go open the email and having them accomplish whatever they need to get done, whether it's a registration or what have you. So that's all
Absolutely.
great to hear. All right. So we talked about like your favorite way. In our little prep meeting for this, you mentioned not you are a Slate user. So
Yeah.
I want you to talk a little bit about the Slate integration and what specifically do you love using it for?
Sure. So probably, I don't know, what was it, 6 months ago, you guys dumped the integration into a beta test. And, we like to beta test and try to break things at Casper College. So we're like, sign us up, let us have that. In our prior CRM, we had an integration that allowed us to pull a query and just send a text. And when we moved to Slate, we didn't have that opportunity. So when that integration came up, we were, first at the door saying, yes, please let us have that. So now, instead of having to create a contact list or create queries of our own and then dump phone numbers into Cadence, we're able to just do that query in Slate, send it over, send the text, off and it goes. We actually have a CRM coordinator on our campus, and she just that's the best thing that has happened for her this year. So
That's great. We've heard a lot of great different things about it. We're glad to see that you guys are using it to its full potential too. So if anyone in the audience has any questions about the Slate integration, reach out to your CSM or your pod or whoever it may be, and we can definitely get you guys hooked up with that too. So
and I'll tell you, it was
all
the
great.
easiest thing we've probably done all year. It was literally an email to my CSM, and they did the stuff and the things, and we were able to use it. So
You must have a dynamite CSM, that's for sure.
we do.
All right. Now we can talk about a little bit about you specifically at Casper kind of use Cadence a little bit outside of the box. And in our prep meeting for this, you talked about your expert line for financial aid, among a couple other things too, but specifically talk to me a little bit about that expert line type of feel for the way you're using Cadence.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, we're really trying to get where students are at. So, we created a designated line for text to financial aid expert. And everyone in the financial aid office has access to answer those text messages. So we're promoting it like nobody's business. It's all over the web, it's on our business cards, it's on every email we send. And it really has become one of the best sources to disseminate information. Students will text us at, all hours. Of course, we have boundaries. We don't work at midnight. Some of us might answer, and they get a little bit surprised, but it's really a great way to talk to those students in succinct little conversations. And when it needs to be a bigger conversation, of course we can pull them up and give them a call, or they can call us, or whatever works best for them.
No longer are we all on the same schedule as a college or prospective college student.
Definitely not. And the beauty of text messaging is, I may not answer you at 10 o'clock at night, but I will answer you, and that will be sitting there for you when you're up and dealing with your text messages.
Yes, that's perfect. Okay, so it's kind of like a texting hotline for any FAFSA and financial aid.
Yep.
Great.
We get
That's
everything
awesome.
from, did you get my FAFSA, to I can't fill out my FAFSA, to why did I lose my scholarship? All of the questions come through there.
Awesome. That's great. So also another thing that we talked about earlier was your work with veterans at Casper. And so I want to talk a little bit about specifically veterans. And a lot of times it's either the veterans themselves don't know that they're qualified for things, or they don't even consider themselves veterans. So can you kind of like talk about who is like available and who's like able to get this kind of support, whether it's from Casper or from wherever?
Great. We designated what we call the Got Your Six hotline. And so anybody that has any military background knows that Got Your Six means we have your back. And so we have a published dedicated line for veterans, their families, and the community, where they can ask any question that they need to. And of course, you can't really talk about some of the personal benefits and things like that, but it gives us a door open to be able to say, come in and talk to our military student coordinators so that we can talk about benefits and what you might be eligible for. We send things out as, during finals week, we do a cram and feed where we have food down in our Veterans Resource Center, and anybody that has any kind of a military connection, or really anybody on campus, can go down and have lunch and commiserate and talk about finals and study. We also have a group of peer advisors that have access to this hotline. So sometimes it does serve as a crisis hotline. We have had students text in the middle of crisis, and we were able to identify that and get them the support services that they need. But we've also had things as simple as, I don't know where my class is. Can anybody tell me where the music building is? And like I
Awesome.
said,
So it's
all veterans have access to that. They self-identify on our application if they have a military affiliation, or if they've applied to use benefits. And so we just create a segment for all of them, and create a contact list that we know who they are and who's monitoring that.
You said that the name of the office was veteran and military affiliated like
Yeah.
services. So
Yeah.
not only are the veterans able to get this, but some of their family members too. So can you
Yeah.
talk about a little bit about how you help those
Yeah, for
populations
sure.
too?
So, we're a community college, and so we strongly believe in community. We also have a very large National Guard population here in our town, and we have a regiment getting ready to deploy in July. And so we've worked really hard to make sure that their dependents and spouses know that we're here for them as well.
So let's say that they are this large National Guard unit is going to get deployed or anything like that. Do you offer them resources for when they're gone or when they come back? I know a lot of times they might lose certain things if they unenroll, or they might feel like they're not going to want to enroll in the first place because they know they're not going to be around long. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that too.
Sure. So we actually have a standing policy and procedure that, if someone is deployed in the middle of the semester, they have a couple of different options. They can choose to withdraw, and, no penalty to them. Then they would be able to reinstate any scholarship offered to them upon their return. They can choose to take an incomplete and, try to complete their courses in the field. That's a thing these days. Didn't used to be, of course, but, if they need services while they're on deployment, if their families need services while they're on deployment, before they leave, when they come back, all of that is available to them through the Got Your Six hotline. And again, it's not just my veterans and military affiliated student coordinator running that. We actually have a group of peer advisors, so fellow veterans and military families that are in that as well. And it's not just college resources we're providing. So, if somebody was struggling with food insecurities, we can either get them in touch with our personal food pantry or one of the ones in town. We can offer direction as to, rent assistance or mental health assistance, that kind of thing as well.
And you're communicating, so if they're the student or whatever, and you're trying to communicate that to them, but sometimes they're overseas and you're not able to, are their families able to text into you guys and kind of look for these types of resources as well?
Absolutely. We haven't wrenched it down so that it can't be used by anybody else. So honestly, if you text us and asked us, where can I find the best hamburger in town, we're going to tell you.
Where is the best place so you can get a hamburger in town?
Probably
when I come
Little
visit
Shop of
Casper?
Horrors. It is a little tiny restaurant here in Casper that does nothing but burgers, but it's horror themed, and they actually show old school horror films in the back. So probably the best
Oh
burger
man, that
in
does
town.
sound fun.
Yeah.
Spooky and delicious. We love to hear it.
And had you
All
texted me,
right.
I totally would have sent that to you via text with maybe a link to the restaurant.
That's great. Shout out to Little Shop of Horrors as well. Okay, I wanted to talk. You mentioned your food pantry, which is another great resource. It's not just for your veterans on campus too, but everybody in general too.
Right.
You do use Cadence a little bit out of a normal use case for this as well. So can you talk a little bit about how you're promoting your food pantry and other things?
Yeah, so probably a year ago, our student life department approached me and wanted to know if they could have a designated line for leftovers. So you work on campus, anytime there's a big meeting or a banquet or a conference, inevitably there is a ton of leftovers of whatever catering has happened upon, the school at that point. And what they were seeing was all of that food was just going to waste. The catering company would come and pick it up, and we had paid for it, and really it wasn't benefiting our staff or students. And so what they asked for was kind of a leftover hotline, and it really is called Leftovers in Cadence. So I can text the leftover hotline and say, hey, I have got leftover chili and T-Bird Jim from homecoming. Student life in turn takes that email or that text and sends it out to everybody on campus and says, hey, if you're hungry, there's chili in T-Bird Jim. We never promote it as something, to combat food insecurity, but that's truly the intent behind it. If they just think there's chili and they're hungry, that's great. But we know as well, if there's leftover sandwiches, maybe they can go grab 2 or 3 of them and have those in their residence hall, or even just somebody that happens to be on campus for class that day. Maybe there was no time between physics and chem and they didn't get lunch, and that would be available for them.
Those are all great points. That kind of brought me into my next question too, is food insecurity and trying to battle that stigma around it and things like that. So how do you identify the students who would benefit from this? Or is it just a blanket,
Yeah.
hey, everyone, go check this out?
It's a blanket, hey, everyone, because truly those that are having food insecurity or other issues, they're not identifying to us, and we may never know, but if just a blanket text goes across and they happen to be in the music building and there's leftover barbecue, go down and get some. So anybody is able to get it, just as long as it lasts.
That's great. Okay, we do have a question in the chat too, so I wanted to get to that. It's from Rachel Merkel. So for those hotlines, whether it's the financial aid or for the veterans or whatever it may be, do you use shared inboxes for those, or are they individual phone numbers per the department, such as veterans and financial aid, respectively? Can you talk a little bit about
Sure.
the logistics of kind of managing this hotline?
Yeah, so we did shared inboxes for those. Because truly, especially with financial aid, there's 9 of us on my team in different aspects, and it takes all of us to manage that for sure. So, to have just one person in there on just theirs is probably not going to work great. Shared inboxes are fantastic for that. We don't see a lot of PII or anything like that coming across where somebody might see something they shouldn't have. but we also control who's in those shared inboxes. So like the financial aid one is only financial aid. The leftovers one is only student life and the administrator, which is me, so that somebody is in there and can control who's sending stuff and who's receiving stuff.
Nice. Okay. About the veterans hotline. Talk to me. I know you were talking about like how someone is kind of like there's like a schedule of who's in charge of like monitoring this at any
Right.
given time. Can you talk a little bit about that? How it's being used and like what are the expectations of the kind of like services or even just texts that go back and forth between your staff or the veteran military affiliated office staff and those students?
Yeah. So we have several work studies that are either VA work studies or federal work studies that work in that in the VRC or the Veterans Resource Center. And some of those are deemed what we call PAVE advisors or peer advisor veteran something or others. Anyways, PAVE. They have access to that and they do have their own schedule as to who's monitoring that. So, Joe might have it on Mondays and Terry might have it on Tuesdays. And then Phil, our veterans and military affiliated student coordinator, has access as well, as do I. And so if any of us are seeing that things are going unanswered, we can pop in and take care of those students as well.
That's great. I love having the set schedule. It's just like everyone is just aware of like who's going to be answering what. And there's no
Yeah.
like kind of confusion or anything like that for like the follow-ups or even just as they're coming in. So that's really great to hear that they have like
And they're all
such a solid schedule.
they're crisis intervention trained as well. So if we do receive somebody that's in crisis, they have training to be able to get them the appropriate resources.
Oh, that's even better. All right. The the texts for we're kind of ping-ponging here, but the texts for the leftovers. Tell me about the actual like messaging around it. And is it simple as just like leftovers in the mess hall or something like that? Or is it more of like a
Yeah.
uplifting kind of thing? Talk to me about
We
that.
try to keep it really positive. So, it might be, hey, the alumni made way too much chili. You should go get some. Or, it could be just finish an executive council meeting and there is a ton of barbecue beef calling your name, So we try and keep it positive. We don't want to ever be like, hey, I bet you didn't eat today. You should come eat. There should be no negative stigma with that because you just never know what anybody is going through. We would never want to single someone out or make them feel like they've been called out, like, hey, you sitting in the lobby, I know you've been there all day and you've not eaten anything. You should go down there.
That's great. We like the positive messaging around it and how the fact that you're kind of sending it out to everybody and there might be some people kind of going and that might not need it, but at least you're getting the message out to those that do, and hopefully they are taking advantage of it for
And
sure.
at least the food is just not going to waste and getting thrown away that way. Sometimes the responses we get are, they're pretty funny. They're like, legit, bro, there's chili or legit, and like way like Wayne's World way.
Totally.
Yeah.
I would be doing the same thing for chili and for barbecue, so I don't
Yeah.
blame them either.
It's kind of fun to sit. So my office has a pretty decent sized window. You can kind of see the blind back there. But depending on where the leftovers are at, you can kind of see the masses flood that way. So you got to be quick.
You set your watch by it for sure and hoping that
Yeah.
you're done with classes.
Yeah.
That's great. Um, okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about Cadence. I want you to tell me specifically like what your favorite thing about Cadence is. I know we talked about the Slate integration and how you're able to build those queries right in Cadence now too. But talk about something else. What else like when you log in, you're just like, I can't wait.
Sure. It's got really cool messages on it that tells me I was really good at clearing out my messages today. And maybe that's the only positive thing that happened today. But I think honestly, my favorite part of Cadence is the customer service that we receive. We have had amazing CSMs and all the way up the chain. Anytime I've had questions or needed something, I'll send off an email first thing in the morning, and by end of day, whatever my deal was is taken care of. So 100% it's the customer service that's my favorite part. I guess secondary to that would be just being able to reach students in a different modality. They don't check their emails. I've got a 22-year-old and a 25-year-old that have 30,000 unread emails. So we know that that doesn't work, but they at least see the text if they don't respond to it.
The 30,000 unread emails kind of makes my hands itch a little bit about all that
Yeah,
unclear
and
notifications, but
he had me check his email one day for something. He needed something out of there. I'm like, bro, you have got to clean these out. He's like, why? I'll just create a new email. Very, very Gen Z.
love it. Okay, so also one of the things that we talked about in our little prep meeting was, I mean, you were talking bros and all that other stuff, and like, is this legit? And sometimes the
Yes.
students kind of like talk like they're your bro or you're
Yeah.
their bro, and
Yeah.
they also say other things that like are not so nice, like when you nudge them about something to do, and they snap back at you. Can you tell me about a little bit of like how you kind of like play along with that and like, yeah, kind of like those.
So my team laughs because that is one of my other favorite things. We have their contact information, so they'll snap back with something, super not nice, and I'll just respond, well, Gary, I'm sorry that you're having a bad day. Please let us know if we can do anything to assist you in the future. Ends it immediately because they know I know who they are.
It's like you're using their first and middle name to kind of bring them in, and
Exactly.
they know
Yeah.
they're in
Yeah.
trouble. That's great.
And if I'm feeling especially saucy, I'll sign my name to it, be like, hey, probably shouldn't be talking to people that way, but if there's anything we can do for you, let us know in the future. Sincerely, Laurie. And they're like, oh, the director saw that. Good going. So
Oh, now
yeah,
Laurie knows. Laurie's
yeah.
going to take away my scholarships and financial aid. Be nice to your financial aid staff, folks.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I think my last question before I need you to do some show and tell for me is
Sure.
talking about the slate querying and kind of what was like your last use case specifically around that. How are you able to use it? How did it go? Yeah, tell me about
Yeah.
the slate query a little bit.
So, like I said, I have an amazing CRM coordinator. So I kind of just, say, hey, do this. And she does the magic things. We're actually working on a campaign right now to promote our summer walk-in advising. So her plan is to pull a query of all applicants for the summer and the fall and any current students and be able to send them that text message. To do that before, we would have had to use a different reporting system to pull those particular students out, then get their phone numbers, then dump them into Cadence, then create the segment, then create the message. And, while still worthwhile, it was a lot of extra busy work. Now she creates the query and sends the email. So we're taking, a half a day process to maybe a couple of, maybe an hour, if that.
Done and
Yeah.
done.
Done and done. Yeah.
That's great to hear. Okay, I have rumors of a Funko Pop collection, and I would be remiss to not at least make you show it off, or at least
Absolutely.
ask what it is. So if you have the ability to tour your office real quick and kind of show us
Yeah.
this
So
Funko Pop
um,
collection.
I pulled a couple just so that you could see them up close and set them behind me. So I'll pull those out first. Before my mom passed away, her thing was she liked to build these sets of Funko Pops. And so she would buy them for all of us kids. And it was never just one, it was the entire set. So when I tell you that I have the entire set of these pink Valentine's Day Star Wars Funko Pops, I literally have 15 of them over in my bookshelf over here. We have some great sets. We have some music ones, we have some book ones. They're just like super random. We have Mr. Luke Skywalker here because really, can you have a Star Wars collection without Luke? And then
You
if you'd
can't.
like, we can take a spin around the office here. I have a mobile camera, go me. So here we go. Ignore the messy desk. I'm a financial aid director. And there we are.
Love it. You are hitting just a niche audience of maybe just one. It's me of Star Wars and nerding out. So that's awesome to see. So I appreciate you giving us the grand tour for sure.
Yeah, not a problem. it's fun to have stuff in your office that students can relate to and other staff as well, obviously. It gives them a couple of minutes to focus on something else besides whatever the issue may be in that moment. They love the Funko Pops. I've got a lot of nerdy stuff in here, so it gives them a minute to de-escalate and gives me a minute to figure out what I need to do to be able to assist them better. So
We all love it. That's great. Lori, that brings us to the end of our time. So I do want to thank you for joining us today for sure. CSM Jen also loves Funko Pops too, which obviously, I'm sure you guys have had plenty
we have
of
had
conversations around those
many a
too.
conversation. Yes.
She was the one giving the rumors that you had this collection too. So that's great to hear too. So I'm going to share my screen one last time. So thank you to everybody again for joining us today, especially you, Lori, for giving us your sage advice about some logistics around Cadence and their use cases. Friendly reminders that we always are dropping new episodes of FYI for your institution. Gil Rogers is always featuring more and more industry updates, talking about all things, of course, FAFSA and any other hot topics in higher ed right now. He's putting those out each and every week. So make sure you keep your eye out on the latest one from this week as well. And then for some upcoming Cadence Campus Live episodes, here is the tentative schedule. So of course, if you guys are interested in participating in any of these, reach out to us. Even if it's not something that you see on here, if you are passionate about whatever it might be that you want to talk about, we are willing to adjust and want to talk to you guys about these topics and how Cadence specifically helps you kind of use those kind of things. So June right now is going to be about Cadence cleanup and making sure all of your data is up to date and what Cadence can do to help you harness all of that as well. So thank you all again for joining us. And we hope to talk to you guys all soon. So thank you, everybody, and have a good afternoon.